Now available on Lulu. John Haynes at Death's Door. The man who rules the world takes on the Greek god of death in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes comic book. Get your copy of the first John Haynes comic at lulu.com today. Recently, the publishers of Konkret Comics seem to be a bit upset about several of my comic reviews. And they were not happy about the reviews that I did regarding the comics Decimation Earth, the comic Luna, and the comic Primate. And because they were upset about these three reviews, they weren't happy with the commentaries that I made. However, what I want to do in this video is try to make things plain to the publishers of Konkret Comics regarding the publishing business and the black image. Now, Konkret Comics has been publishing comics, I think, about for 3 to 5 years. However, I have a lot more experience as related to publishing and a lot more experience as related to the black image. Now, with me getting close to my 50th birthday in September, I have seen a lot in the last 30 plus years as related to the black image, and as I've seen a lot change as related to the black image, I really understand the bigger picture as related to the black image and why we as publishers have to be responsible stewards as related to what we publish on our imprints, like my SJS Direct imprint. Now, I committed myself to a mission to creating positive stories about the black experience back in 1992 when I was 17 years old. Now, when I was 17 years old, I had been studying the media as related to the entertainment industry, and I saw a major paradigm shift as Bill Cosby was trying to craft positive images of black people. However, what was happening was the white media was looking to shift those narratives to promote anti-black agendas, and this started as far back as 1989 with the NWA's Straight Outta Compton. Now, most of those rappers like Ice Cube, Dr. Dre, Eazy-E, and MC Ren thought they were going to be going out here doing hardcore rap similar to what Ice-T was doing on his own. However, these guys of the NWA were not the savvy businessmen that Ice-T was, and they couldn't see how what Hollywood was looking to do was take control over the narrative of rap and hip-hop. And what the white media wanted to do was go out here and take hardcore rap and repackage it as gangsta rap. And as they did this, they changed the rappers of MC Ren, Ice Cube, Dr. Dre, and Eazy-E into thugs, and they used this to promote a narrative that repackaged the narrative of the black group onto black men and changed the narrative to make black men into thugs. And this was the start of trying to change the narrative in the black community that Dr. Cosby had crafted as related to the black image, because Dr. Cosby understood that the black image was something that we needed to go out here and craft as related to shattering stereotypes, but the white media got a hold of those narratives and changed them to fit their narratives and breathe brand new life into old stereotypes. And I remember, again, being at 17 years old, seeing the narrative change as I was watching the Oprah Winfrey Show talking about Boys in the Hood, John Singleton's movie, where they took a story of a father and turned it into a gangster movie, turning it into a hood story, again taking the work of a great black filmmaker and molding it to fit an anti-black narrative that changed the whole direction of the black community. And this is where we saw the image of black people changed into the thug and the gangster, and black people taken off the road that Dr. Cosby put us on as related to going to college and building black businesses and building a black economy, something talked about in depth in Boys in the Hood with Furious Styles. This was all changed as related to the narrative, and again, when I saw what happened with Boys in the Hood and what with the NWA, this is something that made me realize that I needed to be very mindful as related to what type of content I presented when I went out here to publish or create material. It made me very conscientious about creating content overall. And that as a publisher, I understand I need to be a responsible steward to all of the brothers and sisters out here. And part of being a responsible steward is I need to go out here and ensure that my content is going to go out here and reflect the best of black men and black women and black children. I need to be very mindful regarding what content I present on my platform, because the content I produce as related to publications is a reflection of my business, and it's also a reflection of the black image. And as someone who is out here creating media that reflects the black image, I need to be very careful about what I publish. And that's where I had an issue with these third wave books of Konkret Comics, which has been doing a fantastic job of crafting books as related to the black image, whereas we had in the first wave with Acolyte and Odina, we had very strong books that's presented positive images of black manhood and black masculinity and black womanhood and black femininity. We got some really solid books in that first wave, and the second wave, which gave us Candake and gave us The Watchmen, gave us again 2 more solid books that presented us again positive images of black manhood and black masculinity and black womanhood and black femininity. We had very solid books as related to that second wave. However, I did have issues with the book Decimation Earth, and those issues again were not issues as related to trying to destroy the Konkret Comics brand. The title just really was not up to standard as related to publishing a comic. And in my review for Decimation Earth, I expressed my issues, which were that the book just took too long. And again, when you're in publishing and you have worked on multiple stories for multiple years, I've worked over 80 books and at least about 2 comic books, and I have 1 script done. I learned a rule again about not putting too many pages into a story before the reader can get to it, because part of a screenwriter's or any writer's goal is to answer 3 critical questions very quickly. Who is the main character? What do they want? And why should we care? And if you can't answer those questions in 3 to 5 pages, what the customer is going to do is take your book and put it back on the shelf. That is the harsh reality I have seen as related to many comics and why they fail. And if you have a comic or you're like 7, 8 pages like Decimation Earth, you're going to lose the customer because you're not bringing the customer in a required amount of pages. Moreover, you're costing yourself money because as a publisher, I know you have to pay for these pages anywhere from $80 to $150 a page, and this is going to cost you money as related to the publications you produce. So I know from experience that if you don't know how to structure a story, you're going to lose the reader. And if you lose the reader on a book, they're going to wind up leaving that book. And if these books cost anywhere from $15 to $22 with shipping, you're going to wind up losing that reader very quickly. And that's why I made my critique of Decimation Earth to try to help Konkret Comics, because I want the publisher to go out here and take themselves to the next level, because they've got the potential to be able to create some great material, but you got to know how to take criticism, because in this publishing world, you're going to have to deal with a lot of harsh critiques, and you got to build up a thick skin. And that's something I have built up over the last 25 years. I mean, I have gone and had some books like get 1-star reviews on Amazon. I've had people put my titles on lousy book cover sites because I was drawing the covers, because I didn't have the money to go out here and hire artists, and I've had to deal with feminists attack me on the ISIS series, and I had to go, and I've even had hoteps and pro-blacks attack me, and again, I've learned to build up a thick skin to take that criticism. And the publishers at Konkret Comics, you have to take the criticism, because it's going to get a lot harsher out there, because I'm the lightweight as related to criticism. Imagine if somebody like Richard Meyer, Comics Matter, your boy Zach, had gotten a hold of these books, or just some guy. Again, these comic YouTubers, they would have savaged these books worse than I did, and I'm trying to be as tactful as possible, because I want to see Konkret Comics grow as a company. And the only way you're going to grow as a company is you have to listen to people who have a bit more experience as related to this business, like I have. And with those years of experience, what I'm trying to do is help the publishers at Konkret Comics, the brothers and sisters who work there, be able to improve their craft. Because I saw issues with Decimation Earth, and I also saw issues with Luna, which was a book that I believe did not really fit into the overall catalog of Konkret Comics. I don't really believe that this book really flowed organically. Yes, this book was written by a black woman, and she's got a family with a non-black husband and a biracial child, but that's not something that's going to generate sales, because most of these comic fans who are black science fiction and black fantasy fans, when we see a black female character with blonde hair and going out here in a book passing over a black man, we start to get turned off, because when we go to black fantasy, we want to see black on black love. That is one of the things that I see from many readers of my books, like The Temptation of John Haynes and the John Haynes and Esteem series. People come looking for black on black love, because they can go out here and see the swirler stories in many of those BWWM books on Amazon.com, or they can go out here and watch many of these mainstream shows like Scandal, or they can go out here and watch things like the new Little Mermaid movie, or Spider-Man Into the Multiverse, or whatever it's called. People, they can go get a swirler fantasy from any of those mainstream publications, but when they go to a black publisher, what they're looking for is an escape from this mainstream media type narratives. And while the publishers at Konkret Comics possibly believe that this is going to add diversity to their catalog, it's not going to, again, optically look good for your brand. And again, optics are very important for a publisher, because if you have a mission, your books have to fit into that mission. And if you have a book that optically doesn't fit into that mission, what can happen is that people like these comic YouTubers can use that to go out here and attack you. Again, this is why you have to be very mindful of what you produce. You have to be very mindful of what you publish, because things have to fit into your mission, and things have to fit into your mission and flow organically into the mission of your publishing company. This is something that I was very careful about when I was creating the Matilda Crowley character in Spinsterella, and as I created this biracial black woman who is the daughter of a white man and a black mother, I had to be very mindful when I was creating this black goth character of how she would be seen in the black community and how she would be reflected in the black community. And I was very careful as I was creating this character. And yes, I knew a lot of people who have, again, interracial relationships, but I wanted the focus to be on the positive aspects of her being a biracial black woman. And I wanted to be very careful about how I presented biracial relationships. I didn't want to go out here and present it in the way that I've seen in many swirler books, where they present it very optimistically and basically, in some cases, delusionally, where they're deifying and worshiping the white man. No, when I went out here and created the Matilda Crowley character's relationship with her father, Jason Crowley, I presented him as just a man who really cared about his daughter, and I also presented her mother, Muriel Crowley, as a black woman who really cared about her daughter, and I also presented Matilda as somebody who was dealing with issues that many biracial women struggle with. So I tried to be, again, very careful as I was writing this character, and I wanted people to see the content of her character, and I didn't really want people to be focused so much as related to race, but I understood race was an issue, and I needed to be very careful and very mindful about how I presented Matilda to readers. And as I did this, I presented the character as being a part of Harlem. I presented her as being aware of her black history and her black heritage, aware of the struggles of being biracial, and many people loved the Matilda character because I presented her in a way that showed respect to the black community, showed respect to black culture, showed respect to black men, and that was something I didn't see in Luna, where she basically blew off the black male love interest, and that's something that would turn off many black male comic fans. I mean, many black male comic fans, when we see ourselves being blown off, or somebody that represents us being blown off, we just get turned off, and that's something that the writer really needed to think about as related to her audience. And that's where a good editor like myself comes in and tells you, hey, look, you can't put in the first issue her marrying a white dude, because that's going to lead to a bad sour taste in the reader's mouth, and it's going to lead to a sour taste because who buys most of the comics? It's black men who buy the comics. And when black men see a character that represents them being blown off, then you're not going to be able to sell issue number 2. So you might have, again, have the great art and a very interesting story, but the whole thing is you've lost the audience, and that's my point with Luna. It's just, it turns people off because it's a swirler's self-hating story. And again, this is harsh criticism that for some, but this is how the business works. And again, either you hear it from me, somebody with over 25 years experience as related to writing and publishing, or you can hear it from the audience. And if you have to hear it from the audience, it's going to be even more painful because the audience is going to basically just go out here and let you know in the harshest fashion. This is something that I know from experience, that if it's better to just listen to people who are trying to talk to you rather than listen to the audience, because if the audience has to tell you, then you're in a bad spot. Now, this is another issue that relates to another comic at Konkret Comics that the publisher is upset with me for going out here and giving a harsh review, and that is Primate. But when I read the Primate comic, it was just absolutely disturbing because this book just, again, is racially offensive. And this is another case where the writers really have to go out here and do their research, because a black man wearing an ape mask, that's not going to fly well when you consider the racial history of this country. Now, if anybody who's done their research as related to racism knows, a lot of scientists like Charles Darwin and many others back in the days of slavery went out here and made all sorts of assessments saying that black people were inferior, and also made statements saying that black people were less intelligent than apes and monkeys. And many racists out here use this to try to go out here and dehumanize black people by saying black people were like apes. And because they had validation from universities at the time and all of these so-called learned men saying that black men were like apes, this is not a good optical look for a publisher. Again, if you're a black-owned publisher, you're going out here making stories about a black character wearing an ape mask, it's not a good optical look for your brand. If you're creating black superheroes, it's just not an optical good look for your brand, and it's something that really it's gonna start turning people off. Now, I myself, back when I was a teenager, made the same mistake that Konkret has made with Primate. I remember going out here at about 17, 18 years old, and I created this Reichsman character who was gonna be a black Nazi. And I had wrote this whole story out, and back when I was about 17, 18 years old, never reading about World War II and understanding the whole point of the Nazi and the swastika was, again, not only anti-Semitic, but it was also anti-black. Because Adolf Hitler was somebody who was a racist and a white supremacist, and he hated black people, and the whole idea of a black Nazi was something that if I were to have published that at 18 years old, I would have embarrassed myself, and I would have basically made a complete fool of myself, because I would have shown how ignorant I was as related to world history. Now, I took many of those concepts as related to that whole thing about black people being in a fascist state many years ago, about 38 years later, and that's when I wrote the novel Spellbound, because I gained a better understanding of history, I gained a better understanding of people, and again, when I was 18 years old, I didn't understand what a Nazi was, and I didn't understand what fascism was. But as I got older and I did my research, I was able to write that story back in about 2016. And I wrote that story and I was able to write it talking about how black people were spellbound, how they were going out here following in the footsteps of a ragdoll dance entranced, how they were looking to subjugate other black people to their will and make everybody fit into black boxes that are acceptable to white people. I was able to do that because I had gained years of experience, I had gained years of perspective, and I understood more about black history and black psychology and black social dynamics. So I gained a better understanding of history, and that's enabled me to write a much better story in Spellbound rather than doing this awful story about black Nazis that featured John Haynes, and it would have been a horrible story. Again, this is what I gained from gaining perspective as a man. Now, as I was out here again, I thought that was going to be a great story at 18 years old, but the older me, when I was in my late 20s, realized that would have been a horrible story. And when I look at Primate, I mean, the creators think that this is a great story because you're in your feelings about what you created. But as a creator, I can tell you, again, from experience, that you shouldn't have published this story because, again, the ape is related to anti-black racism, and this racism is tied to many intellectuals, and again, they compared us to apes, and if we go out here and put that narrative on ourselves, that is extreme self-hatred. So we cannot go out here and put these type of images and narratives on ourselves as black publishers. We cannot go out here and associate ourselves with racist stereotypes that white racists present, because white racists have gone over the years saying, oh, black men are apes. They have gone out here and created movies like King Kong, which King Kong is not a representative of a large ape. King Kong is a representative of black men, and he is a representative of black men being this brutish, violent animal, and that he is lusting after white women. And when I looked in the pages of Primate, it really reminded me a lot of the anti-black racist messages I have seen throughout much of the media I looked at in the Jim Crow Museum, where again they presented images of black men as apes and monkeys. And this is not, again, optical good look for a black-owned publisher. It's not an optical good look for a character in your catalog to be wearing an ape mask. It's just not a good look, because in recent images we had LeBron James presented in the same way that they did for a War Bonds ad where he was looking like an ape. And we also had racists like Roseanne Barr go out here and present racist statements saying people like Valerie Jarrett was an ape. And also we had her talking about Susan Rice was a part of Planet of the Apes. And when you start connecting the dots as related to these racist tones, as related to this language, you start to say, hey, wait a minute, this Primate character is not really one that's optically good looking for my brand, because if I'm a black-owned publisher, I have to understand if I present a black character as an ape, what I'm gonna get is a lot of heat, not just from me, but if you go to many of these cons, you're gonna start seeing funny looks, because the whole idea of a black man being connected to an ape, this is something that is a turnoff to many black people who do know better, like myself. I know what that represents. It represents a stereotype about the black brute. It represents a stereotype about a black man not having any sort of self-control. It represents a narrative that a black man is wild and out of control. And that's why, when I looked at this Primate comic, I just had to cook and roast it, because this is not a good look for a publisher. Again, as a publisher of black publications, you have to be very mindful about what you produce, because if you produce publications that are wrong, what's going to happen is white supremacists are going to take those books and say, hey, these black people are saying this about themselves, so we get an opportunity to use this to promote our racist messaging. And that's what can happen with a book like a Luna or a Primate, especially a Primate. What can happen is racists will take these types of books, and instead of them elevating brothers and sisters, they are used by racists to go out here and degrade our image. So this is something that Konkret's publishers, you got to really think about, because again, this whole narrative of black people being apes, this is something that people like racists like Roseanne Barr and people like the Ku Klux Klan have done for centuries. And that's why you have to, again, look at this Primate book and really understand why this is not an acceptable book to sell to black audiences. Again, as a publisher with over 20 plus years as a writer, almost 12 years to 13 years as a publisher, I understand the importance of the kind of media we put out here as related to the black image. And I understand that when we're out here, we have to be very careful about the kind of material we put out here. Because I understand that Konkret wants to go out here and create diversity of thought as related to their books, but the whole thing is you gotta watch what you're pushing on the public, because these books can have an influence on people, and that's something I'm very mindful of, because I have been told by many of my readers who are black men that they go out here and they buy books like Isis and Esteem and John Haynes for their children, and that's why I'm very careful about what I put in my books. So I'm very careful about making sure that my books, especially those that are created for all ages audiences, like the Isis series, the Esteem series, and the John Haynes series, are at least PG to PG-13, and sometimes when I want to go into the R zone, I get my chain yanked by the Most High. I remember when I was writing Esteem Horror in the Hamptons, I was gonna put in an R-rated scene in a shower, but I got told that this content is for children, and I usually write my books for all ages, and I wound up changing that scene because I understood that that these books again are going to be read by younger people, and that black fathers go out here and buy these books for their children. So I'm very careful about what I put in my books, and when I go out here and I put together a story, that story is put together with hours and hours of research. I mean, some people get mad at me about ISIS being so-called light-skinned, but when I went out here and did the research on the Egyptian and the Nubian gods, and they said that their skin was like gold, that's the reason why Isis has that skin tone, because she has golden skin, because she is a goddess, and that's the reason why Isis and Esteem have those skin tones, and that's what I put in my stories, again, coming from research. And when I write books like Spinsterella and Spellbound and the legendary Mad Matilda, I do a lot of research. I research things like the family hierarchy. I research the goth subculture. I research the music. And when people read the books, they tell me, hey, everything in here is just like the goth scene. Everything in here is on point. I mean, I've had goths all over the world tell me it's on point. And again, people, they appreciate that kind of research. And again, that's what was missing from Primate to make it a problem. And it makes it a problem for many of the customers, because if they look at this book, they're going to look with a side eye saying, hey, why is a black publisher making a book about a guy in an ape mask? Because a guy in an ape mask is something that's very troubling. It's troubling for an older black man who understands what this means, and it's troubling for me because shows that while this black publisher again wants to create characters, they don't really understand the racist connotations the way I didn't understand them back when I was 18 years old and I was creating this Reichsman character. Again, black people putting swastikas on doors. That was what I wrote when I was 18 because I didn't know any better. And now that I'm older, I understand that would have been embarrassing. And again, I wanted to save Konkret from further embarrassment, because if you were to put this comic on a crowdfunding site, people weren't going to go buy this. They would look at it and go, why is this guy an ape? Because they're looking at the previews and saying, hey, you got a black man possibly in an ape mask going out here saving a Becky from white cops. And again, these are things that people look at it and say optically, this is not looking right. It's, while you may be happy about it, as a creator, I'm not very happy about it, because as I look at it, if you're going to do a character and you want to say that he's a vigilante of some sort, you could have left the ape mask off, put on a hockey mask, put on any other type of helmet, and you could have made a character who would have gone out here and had the same emotional impact, and even though people would have called it a swirling book. Again, people, when they go for black fantasy, they want to see black men and black women. Because they can go see swirling in movies like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse with Miles Morales fiending over Ghost Spider, or they can see Ariel going out here fiending over Prince Eric. But when we come to black fantasy, we want a higher standard for our material. And again, as a publisher who's been doing this for a long time, I understand that the customer who comes looking for black fantasy, comes looking for black science fiction, they want a book that's of a higher standard. They want a story that is of a higher standard. They want to see representations of black excellence. They want to see representation of black people going out here representing our very best. This is what the customer wants to see. And again, when I looked at these books, again, I wasn't looking to be mean. I was really looking to try to help the publishers of Konkret Comics. I don't mean to hurt your business, but if you publish material like this and I remain silent, it's going to hurt your business even more, because those customers are going to look at these books, and after they go and read them, what they're going to do is say, hey, I'm not going to buy any more of this stuff, because you're going in a direction that is just not really one that people don't want to do. This has nothing to do with SJW or being woke. No, it has to do with you maintaining your standards as related to your mission, because you can't give me Acolyte Odina and books like The Watchmen, which feature strong images of black manhood and black masculinity and strong images of black womanhood and black femininity, and then give me a swirler fantasy or give me books with anti-black images like a guy in an ape mask. This does not run congruent with your mission, and this is something that I learned a long time ago. All of your publications have to be consistent with each other. This is something that I really take to heart when I'm out here. I mean, I even have ideas, like I had an idea for a screenplay called Dude, Where's the Bathroom?, which featured a bumbling, stumbling white guy, but I won't put fingers to the keyboard for it because it doesn't fit my mission as a publisher. Again, I have integrity as related to what I publish, because I want to be very careful about what I put out here. I want to be very careful because I understand that as a black publisher, I am shaping the minds of black people. I am shaping the perspectives of black people. And that's why I have to be extremely careful about what I publish and what I produce, because what I publish and what I produce can influence brothers and sisters out here about how they see themselves. And I have to watch what I put out here, because again, what I put out here is a reflection of me, the kind of publishing, the images I'm putting out here. One of the things that I learned from Mr. Superboy a couple of years ago is how he talked about black image. And he said we have things that we have to do as related to black image is we have to be careful about what we put out here. I already knew this when I was a teenager, but when he talked about it, and that's why he's very careful about the images he puts up on his videos. He puts up images because he understands the impact of image. And as a publisher, I understand the impact of image, and that's why I'm very careful about what I produce. I'm very careful about the pictures of black people I put on my publications. I'm very careful about the images I run on my publications. I'm very careful about the stories I write. I'm very careful because I understand that the wrong story can go out here and change the way black people think about themselves, the way a whole generation of black folks' minds were completely changed when the white media co-opted the black image with the NWA and took black people off the road from going to college to going and thinking that being criminals was socially acceptable. So I understand how important image is, and I understand how important image is as related to black people. So when I look at Konkret Comics again, this is a promising publishing company, and as a fellow publisher, again, I look at this company. They've got a strong catalog, but they have to understand why you have to be mindful of the publications you put up, because the publications you put on your catalog have an impact on brothers and sisters out here. They have an impact on how we see ourselves. They have an impact on how we look at ourselves, and they have an impact on how we think about ourselves. And when I was out here doing the John Haynes series that Mike Williams, my artist, suggested for the covers, He told me he wanted to see a story about black manhood and black masculinity in a positive light. And I remember in 2018 we talked about this on social media, and I started to see the impact of John Haynes on black men who have read the book. I mean, the image of a masculine heterosexual black man as a leader, as a man who stands up for himself, it started to have an impact on a lot of brothers as how they started to see themselves. And I even have people who write about John Haynes and tell me, this John Haynes character really, I like the way he handles himself. I like the way he shows leadership. I like the way he takes care of his business. I mean, they like everything about that character, and that character's image reflects positively on black men. I never expected that to happen, because back in 1990, when I created the character, he never got right. And when I wrote Temptation of John Haynes in 2005, I basically put him there because I didn't have anybody else. But the character, as I have written him and he's evolved, has resonated with people. And that's one of the things that really makes me think carefully about the kind of stories I produce with John Haynes. It really makes me think, when I go out here and write a story, I have to think about what I'm presenting. And then again, sometimes the Most High will pull me and tell me, no, don't write that story, don't write that scene. And I do that because it was keeping me from going out here and writing something that would be detrimental to the character or breathe brand new life into a stereotype. I am very careful about what I write. And again, very careful because I understand how it shapes the black image. And even with characters like Esteem and Isis, I'm very careful about the stories I produce, because I have heard from people who are fathers say, hey, I give this story to my little black girls. I give this story to show them positive images of black girls and black women. And the kids say that they like the stories. So I try to be very careful, again, because I know my responsibility as a publisher is to my audience. And if I'm out here, I have to watch what I'm publishing. And I want Konkret Comics to understand their responsibility to their audience. You have to understand that if you want to have your business, you have to build a reputation as related to the publications you produce. You have to build a reputation as related to your brand. And you can't go out here and get upset, because if you publish stuff, you have to take the criticism, because the people who criticize you are the ones who care. And I gave those criticisms because I care, and I want to see Konkret Comics' business grow. And the only way for it to grow is for the publisher to understand, hey, you gotta watch what you publish, you gotta watch what you produce, you gotta watch what types of material you put on your catalog, because the wrong books can go out here and turn an audience. And when people look at your catalog, they need to see consistency, because if you go over to Amazon.com and check out all the Shawn James books, all the books are consistent, all the books flow with each other. And even though I have characters who are in interracial relationships, like Matilda Crowley's parents, they are shown in a balanced, humanized way. We get to see the flaws of a Muriel Crowley and a Jason Crowley as they're in an interracial relationship. And when it comes down to the characters who are heroes, again, you get balanced pictures of those characters. And you really have to, again, think about the overall picture of what you're representing to black people, because if you represent the wrong images, again, people will take your images and use them to twist them, like what can happen with a primate. Again, the racists can take that image and use it to promote anti-black narratives. Or you can have racists who take a character like the Luna and turn her into a swirler. Because when you have a black female with blonde hair out here looking and passing over black men for white men, again, I've seen this happen with shows like Scandal. I've seen this happen with many of the BWWM books. And again, Konkret doesn't have the years of experience that I have with the media, studying the big picture of the media, and I don't want to see this company fall off, because all it takes is a couple of bad publications and it can hurt the overall business of a publisher. All it takes is a couple of bad books that can turn people off. And again, this is why you have to be very careful in your selection process. You have to be very careful when you're selecting books, and that's where a seasoned editor comes in. A seasoned editor will look at a script and say, you know what are you going here with this ape character? I mean, if you've got a black character in an ape mask saving a white woman, this is kind of similar to King Kong. This is similar to a lot of anti-black images. And again, not trying to be harsh, but the whole thing is that this business is harsh. This publishing business is brutal. This publishing business is no joke. And I've been in this business since the 90s. I started my own imprint in 2009, so I understand how important it is for a black publisher to look out for their business. And again, I understand you have to be, again, very careful and be very mindful about what you publish. You have to be very mindful and very careful about what you publish, because you have to think about what you're presenting to readers. You have to think about what you're going out here and presenting to black people as related to our image, because as the stewards over our image in new black media, we have to go out here and make sure that our publications meet a higher standard. We cannot go out here and demean the black image. Our job is to elevate the black image. Our job is to empower black people. Our job is to show the best of our black image. Just like John H. Johnson did when he started Johnson Publications, we have a job to take the baton from John H. Johnson and maintain our image. And we also have a job to take from Dr. Cosby before he passes away, and be able to go out here and produce media that reflects positively on us. That is our job as stewards over the black image. Our job as stewards is to look out for our people. Our job is to show our people pictures of ourselves that we won't get to see in the mainstream media, because I can see swirlers in many of the mainstream publications. I can see anti-black racist images of black people being depicted as apes in most of the mainstream media's racist images. But when I go to black media, especially new black media, I want to see images that inspire. I want to see images that uplift. I want to see images that empower our people, because that's why I go out here and was supporting Konkret Comics and looking to spend money with them, because I can't get that image at Marvel. I can't get that image at DC. I can't get those images at even indie comics like Image. No, the only place I get those images are at independent publishers like Konkret Comics, like Raymond Leonard with his Great Agent solo book, like Chris Crazy House with his naturally cute coloring books. It is black independent creators that uplift our community, and I want Konkret Comics, being a small indie company that is growing, to be aware of its space in the world of publishing and its space as related to the black image. Now, you can go get Konkret Comics over at KonkretComics.com, and you can also pick up many of the books on the SJS Direct imprint, like the Isis, Esteem, and John Haynes series, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find those books at other online booksellers like Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. And you can also pick up my first comic, John Haynes, at Death's Door on Lulu.com. You can get a paperback version there, and you can get a digital version of Esteem, No Good Deed on Kindle for 99 cents. And if you want to see me be able to make more videos about comics, science fiction, and fantasy, or help me be able to launch the next SJS Direct comic, But you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, the Beauty Myth. Learn the beauty secrets of the goddess next door in this action-packed Isis series adventure. Get Isis, the Beauty Myth at online booksellers everywhere today. Coming to paperback and e-readers, John Haynes, 1987. Learn lessons about life and teenage love in the 1980s with this coming-of-age John Haynes story. Pre-order your copy of John Haynes, 1987 at online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.